What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Celtics Talk podcast here on the NBC Sports Network. Abby, I don't suspect you're going to scream today, right?
No, pretty down.
I kind of want to scream because we had to sit through the Celtics' miserable Game 2 performance in Golden State, where they lost by what felt like $1 billion. Somehow it only got down to 19 at the end.
Scream of frustration, disappointment, anger. Yes.
Do you want to get the dictionary out?
I agree.
We just go through the whole thesaurus? I want to start here. Who or what are we most mad about?
The way the Celtics came out in that third quarter again, after talking for 2 days about improving upon that, and then just coming out completely flat.
They are so stubborn. This team. I'm sorry, I'm just screaming in bits and phrases now. But you would think at some point in the season they would recognize, like, hey, we got to stop shooting ourselves in the foot. We took care of business in Game 1, found a way to rally back, and let's go out there and assert our will and really put a stranglehold on this series. And yet, we knew what was going to happen. This is what they've done this season.
It's true. It's true. I will say, in their defense, they got off to a great start. Looked really good.
I don't even remember it.
Maybe, and to your point, got a little complacent, which is what we have seen them do, and let their foot off the gas, and then it was a slippery slope from there. I mean, the
slippery. This is one of these damn hills covered in ice.
The turnovers. I mean, it is frustrating that if it's not the one thing, it is another. Last game, it was offensive rebounds. They're just the same issues that keep recurring.
But turnovers has been a really recurring issue.
And it's really glaring, and it's really bad. It also seems really fixable.
Do you think in that locker room, they sit there and they're like, hey, guys, I know Ime just gave us this 12-page game plan. There's one thing we have to do. Not turn the ball over.
Yes. They absolutely said that before Game 7 in Miami and improved upon it. Maybe it wasn't so explicitly laid out for this game. However,
maybe it needs to be.
I think it probably was.
I'm just going to yell at this episode.
I know.
I mean, if you had told me the Celtics were going to come out to San Francisco and go home 1-1,
you'd be happy.
Probably, but we're prisoners of the moment, and this game was a disaster to watch, and you never felt. They got to 6 in the third quarter, I think, and then it was like a 17-0 run, and it felt like all the air went out of the building. They have no excuses. They were rested. They talked, as you said, for days, and yet this third quarter continues to be an issue. Why is the third quarter an issue?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
And I asked, Al was asked about it, and he said, we had some good third quarters for a little bit there during the regular season.
I wrote a story about how Ime had this magical thing going on at the start of these playoffs.
At halftime. And for some reason, it has just reverted back to what we saw in the beginning of the season, which was absolutely dreadful. And I do think it's got to be lack of focus, lack of intent, without playing with force and just not coming out and being ready for what's going to come at you. But these Golden State Warriors are the best third quarter team in the NBA and have been in the postseason. So I think that's what's the most frustrating, and we felt it through the Milwaukee series, you felt it through the Miami series. There are no surprises here. The Celtics know exactly what is coming at them and can do nothing to stop it.
I think what's most frustrating to me is that the Celtics are me. I need a deadline. I need some motivation to do something. I can't just cut the grass every week. The grass has to be up to my knees, and then I cut
before
it.
You take action.
Except if I'm on the road for 10 straight days and I have to send my brother-in-law over to do my job. But in general, I say to myself, why don't I just do it when I can? No, why can't I write this story 2 days in advance and make my life easy? I can't. I can't. And this is the Boston Celtics. They are in perfect position to make this series. 2-0 going back to Boston, it's almost over. Never say never, but.
Right.
So I just don't.
It's human nature. It is human nature. I agree with you. I am that way too.
Easy, Michael Jackson. I don't want to hear about human nature.
Till my back is against the wall, right? Am I really going to come through? So, which we've seen them be able to do. The question now is Forsberg. Let's find some solutions. How do the Celtics get better?
We're not having solutions because I don't have any, and I just want to be angry. It really sounds so simple.
That is your human nature.
Thank you. But it really just comes down to just making better decisions. I'll say this. Other things that drove me nuts beyond the turnovers were Ball movement went away tonight. They were so good at it the other night. Like it felt like everything. Now give credit to the Warriors.
Yep.
They were much more in tune defensively than we saw in Game 1. They changed up their personnel a little bit, obviously. Gary Payton Jr. being back in there.
Who Scal warned us.
Yeah.
All yesterday, Scal spent talking about the impact that Gary Payton II could have on this game. Just his athleticism, his tenacity and energy.
And even made a 3, which he hasn't done in 7 months. So
on a broken elbow. So,
I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like Rookie of the Year. Did you watch Rookie of the Year?
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Sure. Like Henry
different
Rowan-Gardner
sport
over there
based-
chucking in 3s.
It was a different ligament situation, wasn't it?
Yeah, then it was too tight.
Yeah.
So I want to give appropriate credit to the Warriors, but
Okay.
and yet I can't get past this that the Celtics just continue to be like they have 10 toes and once a week they shoot off one, and eventually you're just not going to be able to stand.
Are you going to mention Jayson Tatum's plus minus?
Worst in NBA Finals history, I believe.
Minus 36.
So,
and what was crazy is I did a radio interview this morning, and the guy asked me, how much would you bet the over-under on Jayson Tatum at 12, or at 12 and a half, because he had 12 points in Game 1. And I said, I will bet my entire annual salary that he would go over, maybe even in the first quarter. And he did, and then it was all downhill from there.
And I don't want to put too much on him.
Yeah, I agree.
The bigger concern for me is him twice in this game holding that shoulder like it was not feeling good.
Yes.
Which now I say that, but he did come back and he scored all those points.
Right
So it's hard to get too caught up. I don't think he had nearly as good of a playmaking game. I think he forced some shots. I think him and Jalen both got very frustrated. Jalen because of foul trouble. But yeah, it was jarring because like Tatum, even on bad nights, you look up and he's like a plus 10. And it doesn't make any sense for like why that happened. So Celtics need to figure out how to get him going, but maintain the playmaking. And I don't know if that's a huge deal. Tatum always.
I agree. The
sort of
number is
bounced
just
back.
glaring, and I was expecting a bounce back game from him because that's what he's done throughout this playoff run. I'm also surprised that Ime Udoka getting a rare tech.
So, okay.
He told me post game, obviously that was his intention, and it didn't fire up the troops.
How many technicals do you think Ime had this year?
A handful? 5?
7. You know where that ranked among coaches
Price
in
is
the
Right
league?
rules, I might have won. Low. Really?
Tied for 4th most.
Oh.
I know. So he has this. I do
rare.
agree.
There's 82 games. He had 7.
I know, and it was funny because like when he got one tonight, I actually thought to myself, I was like, wow, when was the last time he had a tech? And I can't remember it.
Look at you, Chris, the numbers guy.
I mean, so I just thought it was incredible that he had that many this year. I just don't remember him being that mad. But maybe the start of the year.
7 doesn't sound like that many to me.
I bet it came in like a 7-game span at the start of the season too.
Yeah, probably.
Because
Right.
that team was dreadful.
Yes.
Ironically, one of the Jayson Tatum's worst plus minus before this game was minus 33. Shout out Larry Bird. Against the Nets at the start of the year where they got absolutely thrashed and that was a bad night. So
Yeah.
But it shows that was to me it's like they had come so far because they weren't doing that and not having those sort of nights. And then it's been a while since they've just had their teeth kicked in.
But it is, as it was in the regular season, as Jayson Tatum goes, this team goes.
Mm-hmm.
And that is his role on this team.
Yeah,
How
but the role
much- how
players
much-
suck too, so.
Absolutely. That's fair. That's not what I said. But how much Draymond Green and the chirping do you think that impacted the Celtics? Al Horford, for the record, after the game was asked about it, and he said, Draymond's going to do what he does.
Yeah.
That has no impact on us.
Like you just know that going in.
But the slow motion replay of his little scuffle with Grant was ridiculous.
I mean,
shoving his face.
We have the promo clip.
How is that not a second tech?
I don't know. He gets away with a lot. There was someone else posted one where he's like offensive lineman through people, and I don't know. He has leeway, even though he has to be absolutely
Right, he has a
infuriating and
reputation.
official. Yeah, but for whatever reason, instead of like holding it against them, they actually give him more leeway, and you just have to be braced for that. I thought it was telling that first possession of the game, Draymond just goes up there and rips the ball out of Al's hands. And I was like, Nick jump ball, Celtics won it, but it was a tone setter where it was telling his team, this is how it's going to operate, this is how it's going to be. I'm checking my other list of things I'm mad about. Rob's not himself.
He's not, that knee. I talked to him yesterday, and he said it's feeling better. Ime told me those 2 days off are going to help him so much, and he just clearly is just not himself. He's not the Time Lord.
Nope.
Can he get back there? And do the Celtics
you're
need
asking the wrong
him
guy. I'm gonna tell you
in
yes.
this series?
I
to
hope
be
so.
that?
He has to because the Tice minutes have not been good. and I don't know what the solution is short of that. To the point where I'm tricking myself. I'm going, could you play Hauser? Add some shooting to the floor?
Stop.
Like,
You did say that. I thought you were kidding.
No, I'm not kidding. I'm searching for options there because you just need bigger bodies at some point. So I don't think that's an option.
I might actually do this if you suggest Luke Cornett.
I'm just saying, when you have a bad game like this, you overreact, and certainly I am. What else is on my list? I have one more thing.
Okay.
Why did every turnover feel like that it was Steph Curry three-pointer right after it?
Because
Because
Warriors,
it was. Because every single time they turned the ball over, it felt like Steph Curry had a three-pointer.
Because the Warriors make a living in transition. Yes, that is what they do. Again, like I said, none of this is surprising. The surprising part is that the Celtics lockdown defense, which we saw flashes of in that first quarter and for parts of that first half, just completely disappeared. And they allowed their offensive struggles to affect their defensive intensity. And that is an issue, was a big issue at the beginning of the season and has come back to rear its head.
How many viewers do you think have made it through this portion of the podcast?
I don't know. I tried to keep it positive. I tried to find some solutions.
I was trying to I thought screaming and being angry would resonate with people. So
This is the finals, Chris.
you know what I'm most mad about?
What?
Celtics wasted that dress.
I know, it's true. It's a
You
good dress.
should have saved it for the inevitable Game 7 we're gonna have.
I got a lot of pictures in this dress, though, so it's all good.
I-
Check the Instagram.
A little behind the scenes, you walk through the building with Abby, and literally, there's people parachuting in from the roof. They're like, "I love the color of your dress. Oh, I love your print." You know, I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah, we're getting the rap signal. It's time to go. This is.
we have stuff to do." No. All right. Last thing.
There's more.
What's gonna happen in Game 3? I do have another hit coming up, but we're good. We got 2 minutes.
I know. I gotta say, I was thinking the way the Celtics lost this one, and the way that they have been playing inside TD Garden in this postseason.
Terrifying.
I'm not loving Game 3, but I feel
Amazing.
good about Game 4. What do you think?
I just think it's going to be the roller coaster. So now they have motivation, right? They're going home, and you're like, oh, you
The
kinda
bounce
feel-
back,
you
that's
feel-
true.
Yes, exactly. And then
Yep.
they'll bounce back and be like, oh, they're totally in control of the series. And then they'll lose Game 4. We'll come out here for Game 5, and then Game 6 they'll blow it, and then we'll come back here for Game 7.
Yeah.
So get your order in for whatever you need to go. I don't know.
Enjoy the ride. It's been fun so far.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting, and we're both on a red eye back tonight, so we're gonna be even more tired tomorrow.
While we're
I know.
exhausted, you guys can
First world problems.
like,
You're
subscribe.
welcome.
I'm wearing on a charter jet, lady. We're like
Flying over. Oh,
you're on United. Good luck to you. Everybody go like, subscribe, check us out on the YouTube page. We'll catch you next time.
You'll see my dress on the plane.
If you wear that on the plane, that'd be amazing.
I will not.
Before we get out of here, Amina Smith and Brian Scalabrine had a chance to catch up with Commissioner Adam Silver before Game 2. Here's their chat.
NBA Commissioner Adam Silver is here with us. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us. The Celtics back in the NBA playoffs for the first time since 2010. And then you got Scal here, who's on that championship team back in 2008. Just what does it do for the league when you have the Celtics back on that stage of the NBA Finals?
Well, I think for both of these franchises, I mean, they're two of the original 11 franchises in the league. Celtics, tied for the most championships in league history, going for the record. The Warriors won the first ever NBA championship, so two storied franchises. So for both the Celtics and Warriors, I think not just for obviously the Boston community and the Bay Area here, but truly global followings for both these teams. So it's fantastic for the league.
And the league has kind of been taken over by super teams. I can't help but to think about LeBron James and him taking his talents to South Beach years ago. And now you have two teams in the NBA Finals that have really drafted players and built their teams around guys that they've developed. You know, how much is the league maybe shifting from that super team to now having homegrown teams at these stages?
It's so interesting you ask that because, of course, these are super teams by definition.
Correct.
You know, because they're here. But I know the way you mean it. They're created in different ways. The core comes through the draft. I mean, they still take advantage of trades and free agency. But I don't think there's any doubt that not only do fans in those markets, but fans everywhere think it's a fairer way. I don't know how else to say it, you know, and I think to reward teams that have great scouting, you know, great professionals in executive positions, doing the drafting, building teams, I don't know what to say it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
I just think it leads to more fan support, and I think it's something that we pay a lot of attention to.
One thing I want to talk about from last year to this year, it seems like the physicality of the game has gone up, and I think the improvement of the game has gone up. What is the process from going from last year to this year and changing the rules and allowing more physicality to get to this great game that we had all season?
Great point. The process, it really begins with a meeting we have with all the general managers around the league. Then it goes to a competition committee and ultimately to the board of governors who oversee the entire league. I think there was a sense that we'd gotten out of balance a bit, that offenses were being favored, players who had found crafty ways, called non-basketball moves. I mean, good for them. I mean, that's what happens when you have some of the greatest athletes in the world. They look at a set of rules and they figure out edges. And I think there was a sense then that we had to pull back a little bit, let defenses be great, not end up calling fouls where, even for me sitting in the stands, most people would say, even if they just casually played basketball, the reaction was, come on, that's not a foul you should be calling. That's not a basketball move. That's contrived to try to create a foul. And so I think we're in a better spot. I mean, one thing I know from just the research we look at too, fans like defense more than they get credit for. They obviously, we don't want it to get out of hand. We don't want it to become overly physical where sort of brute strength is favored, but on the other hand, you want guys to play hard defense, and I think we found a much better balance this year.
Yeah, speaking of balance, like where you've mentioned a lot of times about load management, players sitting out, all that stuff. Are there ways to head the direction of correcting that?
I'm hoping there are. We're about to go into another collective bargaining cycle with the players, and I think we got to look at everything from maybe incentivizing players for certain awards to ensure that they've played a certain number of games to be eligible. I think a lot of it comes down to proper maybe financial incentives too, in terms of number of games played, number of minutes played. I think everyone wants to see the best players on the floor, but back to that concept about balance, I think we all know from the very old days in the league, there are plenty of examples where guys played through injuries and they probably shouldn't have.
Yeah, for
sure.
So
I think finding that balance where moving away from necessarily a load management concept, of course, putting guys in a position where they can take care of their bodies, getting rest when absolutely needed, but still creating the right incentives to get the best players on the floor. That's what the fans care about.
Let me ask you, like if you were a kid and you went to a game and you wanted to see the Brooklyn Nets and Kevin Durant checks in the second half and plays 18 minutes in the second half, would you be upset if you saw that and say like, man, I didn't get to see him for 36?
I wouldn't be.
No.
And I think in the so-called old days, even so, I'm in my 30th year in the league. I mean, just take Michael Jordan, for example. In those days, Michael knew everywhere he went, there was a group of fans who were there primarily to see him, and it may be the only opportunity they'd ever have in their lives maybe to see him. And so even if he were a bit banged up or the view was he needed rest, he would start the game, play a certain number of minutes. Maybe he'd sit for the whole second quarter. He'd start the third quarter, maybe sit more minutes. And it was a different time. And I think part of it, having been the league at the time, and it says a lot about Michael Jordan, it wasn't just what his Phil Jackson or Jerry Krause or somebody was telling him. It was like he felt that obligation.
Yeah.
And in fairness to today's players, I mean, there are many cases, and I'm sure you're having these conversations with players too, where it's often the teams, it's a program they're looking at on load management, analytics. So again, there's not simple answers. I don't think that the league office should be in the position of dictating that you have to play this many games or minutes. But I do think we can't lose sight of the fact that we're doing this ultimately for the fans. We are a business. People are paying an enormous amount of money to see these games in person, watch them on television too. And again, just as we were talking about defense earlier, it calls for a bit of a recalibration.
And you mentioned load management, and there are discussions out there right now about whether or not the season should be shortened. You have some people on one side who say no, like you're an elite athlete, you play those games, you go through the season. And you have some people who are like, okay, maybe that's something that the league needs to consider. What are your thoughts on either shortening the season or keeping it the way it is?
Not surprisingly, I'm in the middle. So I think that the season is roughly the right overall footprint right now, beginning called mid-October, ending in mid-June. I think potentially we could cut a few games back and add some other competition throughout the year, possibly an in-season tournament to create more fan interest. It's interesting. People quickly forgot that we reduced the number of games last year in the regular season because of COVID issues from 82 to 72. It made almost no difference in terms of injuries. It wasn't as if we eliminated load management that teams went into and say, all right, 72 games this year instead of 82, we won't rest players. So that was a valuable lesson because, look, it's a business too. If you reduce from 82 to 72 games, it's a big economic impact, not just for the league, but for the players too. It's a revenue sharing system. They get half the money. So they're interested in playing a full complement of games. And I've, like, when we've talked about this, I hear from some of the old timers say, like, don't coddle the players. I think this is trying to find the right balance. I don't think we're way off in terms of mid-October to mid-June. I do think we could find ways to enhance competition throughout the year.
Speaking of competition throughout the playoffs, a lot of blowouts. Like, what's your theory on that?
I don't really have one. I'm told by folks in the league office that it's not that aberrational.
Okay.
That they seem to all come in the last round, so it made it seem like we were having more blowouts than usual. But I don't really. It's something we'll look at when the season's over. We'll go back and we'll look over everything. But it's also, even to the extent it is a little bit, off the charts in terms of the last few years. I think before you start changing rules and things, you got to make sure there's a pattern over a few years. But I don't think it's an issue that requires our attention yet.
Sure. And then with the Celtics back in the NBA Finals, Boston's a great city. When could we see All-Star be in Boston?
Ooh, tough one.
Well, I don't know if you knew this, but the first 2 NBA All-Star games ever, which were in the early 50s, were played in Boston.
Oh, wow.
So we got to get back there. And, for Wick and Steve and ownership there, I know that's something that they care about.
Yeah.
I can say as a fan, as the commissioner, we love to get around the league, different markets. Boston is one of those great sports towns.
Yeah.
I know that people would love to have it there, so they are focused on it. I know we'd love to get back there for all.
And I'll send you the invite to the house party when you get it done.
All right.
Thanks so much, Adam, for coming to join us.